We're going to head over to wide receivers. Sean, what are your top 5 wide receivers for week 18?
This is pretty standard, but I have Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, and CeeDee Lamb.
That sounds like a very, very popular and common top 5 right there. So outside of those top 5, who are you especially high on this week at the wide receiver position?
Yeah, so for the last time in the regular season anyway, I'm high on Zay Jones. He's been a guy that I've been high on since I want to say like week 2. But everybody knows he's a high-end wide receiver 3 by now, but I especially love him this week. He's my wide receiver 27. It's a must-win crucial game against the Titans, who are a pass funnel defense. So I do think the Jaguars are going to have a pretty pass-heavy game script, even for a 6.5-point home favorite. Plus, there's some incentives in play here. Zay Jones needs 2 receptions to get to 80. He gets a $250,000 bonus for reaching 80 receptions. So I think Lawrence will absolutely make sure he gets those 2 catches. But more importantly, he needs 98 yards to get to 900, and he gets an extra $500,000 to getting there. So now in these must-win games, the incentives are a little bit harder to force. But this is a game script where I think that the Jags are going to absolutely be airing it out. And Zay Jones will have that extra incentive, to clear 100 yards here. So I think he has one more big game to close the season out with here. And the other guy is Chris Olave against the Panthers. He's my wide receiver 13. The consensus has him all the way down at wide receiver 26. I just don't get that. Now, he returned last week to, a bit of a quiet performance for him. He caught 4 passes for 42 yards, didn't score a touchdown, but it was a tougher matchup against, stingy Eagles secondary. Plus, the Saints had a commanding lead for most of that game, so they didn't have to throw much. I think Dalton only threw for about 204 yards. But Olave returned with a 94% routes run rate, so he's seeing that massive usage. And the Panthers are without J.C. Horn, so this is a pretty easy matchup on paper. It's also a meaningless game, so, the Saints have nothing to lose by airing it out. So I think Olave bounces back with a pretty big game here.
Yeah, that New Orleans-Carolina matchup is one of our luck ranking games this week, a luck ranking difference of 11 between those 2 teams. Real quick, I wanted to touch on that Zay Jones thing. You mentioned how Tennessee is a pass funnel. They definitely are, and Zay Jones lines up on the outside over 2/3 of the time. Tennessee, much weaker on the outside and much weaker versus the deep ball as well. So I think it goes right towards your philosophy of airing it out there. Wide receivers, which ones are you lower on this week than the consensus?
So I'm low on Jalen Waddle. He's my wide receiver 26. The consensus has him wide receiver 15. To be fair, anytime I faded Waddle this season, either betting against him or saying I'm low on him, he has absolutely proven me wrong. So take this with a grain of salt. Obviously, he's super talented, but it'll likely be Skylar Thompson under center this week, or Teddy Bridgewater, who's playing with a broken pinky finger on his throwing hand. I don't know how he's going to be able to play. So I'm assuming it's going to be Skylar Thompson. So Waddle's production should take a hit. He only has 1 full game with Thompson so far against these very Jets. And he only got 3 passes for 23 yards. So, I just don't see how you'd be ranking him as a mid-range wide receiver 2. I do view him more as a high-end wide receiver 3 here. Obviously, if you want to bet on talent, you can go with him in GPPs. But I think overall, we have to lower our projections for him a bit. And then another talented receiver that I'm low on is George Pickens against the Browns. He's my wide receiver 45. Now, despite being one of the more talented young receivers in the game, I do view him more as a touchdown dependent wide receiver 4, especially in a spot like this where I do think the Steelers will be a lot more run heavy, probably a bit more conservative since it's a must-win game. I don't think they want Kenny Pickett throwing it deep unless they absolutely have to. So that's going to impact a player like Pickens, especially, the chances of him having a ceiling game. So, we could probably bank on 3 catches for 35 yards, maybe a touchdown here. So that's why, I just view him as sort of a touchdown dependent wide receiver 4 here.
At least he gets some touchdowns occasionally this year, unlike his counterpart.
Yeah, especially Deontay Johnson. It's coming.